I still remember the day I first discovered Mighty Final Fight on the NES. It wasn't a game I planned to play. I stumbled across it in a small local game shop that mostly sold used cartridges. I remember the box art catching my eye immediately. The familiar Final Fight characters, but drawn in this exaggerated, almost cartoonish style. At the time, I didn't know the word chibi, but I knew the look made me smile. It felt playful, almost mischievous. And for a kid who loved anything with bright colors and bold characters, that was more than enough for me to pick it up. When I got home and plugged the cartridge in, I had no expectations. I'd never played the arcade versions, and I barely knew the SNES had its own Final Fight. But the moment the game started, something clicked. It felt familiar and new at the same time. I remember thinking, this is what a Saturday afternoon game should feel like. Simple, chaotic, funny, and just a little bit challenging. Now, decades later, replaying Mighty Final Fight with a modern mindset is a strange experience. We live in an era where beat-em-ups have made a comeback. Games like Streets of Rage 4, Final Fight LNS fan mods, and indie brawlers have revived the genre with smoother animations, layered combat systems, and flashy effects. So the question today is a genuine one. Is Mighty Final Fight still good? Does it still hold up, not just as a nostalgic memory, but as a game worth playing in 2025? To answer that, we need to start with what makes Mighty Final Fight such a unique NES title. One of the first things that stands out is the visual identity. The chibi-style, super deformed character designs weren't just a gimmick, they gave the game a personality. Cody's confident smirk, Hagar's exaggerated muscles, Guy's fierce anime stare. These tiny sprites had so much expression. Even as a kid, I could feel the charm radiating from the screen. And today, with all the pixel art revivals happening in modern indie games, those visuals feel surprisingly timeless. They don't try to look real, they try to look fun, and they succeed. But visuals are only part of the equation. Let's talk gameplay, because this is where Mighty Final Fight really stands out compared to other NES beat-em-ups. Most games on the NES hardware were somewhat limited in this genre. You'd move, punch, kick, maybe jump, and that was about it. Simple enemies, simple stages, and a lot of button mashing. But Mighty Final Fight took things further. It introduced a leveling system, something almost unheard of in console beat-em-ups at the time. As you defeat enemies, your character gained experience and leveled up, unlocking stronger moves and more potent combos. Watching Cody's punch string evolve or Hagar's throws become more devastating felt incredibly satisfying. It was a small touch, but it gave the game a sense of progression that has aged remarkably well. Even now, leveling up gives you something to look forward to between stages. It adds a layer of strategy. Do you play it safe and conserve health, or do you go aggressive to rack up experience and boost your stats? It's a simple system, but in the world of 8-bit brawlers, it gives Mighty Final Fight a distinct identity. Another thing I appreciated when replaying the game today is how tight and responsive the controls still feel. Attacks come out cleanly, movement is fast and predictable, your character goes exactly where you want them to. There's a weight to every punch and throw that you don't always get from NES beat-em-ups. Some older titles feel slippery or stiff, but Mighty Final Fight feels precise. Even after playing modern games with analog sticks and complex combos, I slipped back into the controls with no trouble at all. And then there's the enemy variety. The game doesn't have a massive roster, but it handles its foes really well. Each enemy type has a clear pattern, clear weaknesses, and a clear rhythm. Abobo-style brutes charge at you, knife wielders dash quickly, and the bosses, all with their exaggerated personalities, force you to adapt your timing. For an NES game, the readability is excellent. You always know why you got hit and what you could have done differently. That sense of fairness is something modern gamers still value highly. Of course, one of the biggest differences between Mighty Final Fight and the original Final Fight is the single-player limitation. The arcade and SNES versions were built around co-op chaos, 2 players punching their way through the city. On the NES, hardware limitations forced the game to be solo only. As a kid, I didn't think much of it. It was normal. But today, that's one of the few real drawbacks. Not because the game is worse, but because so much of the beat-em-up genre's appeal comes from the social experience. Still, playing it solo has its charm. It feels more personal, almost like a fast-paced action RPG distilled into a tight 45-minute adventure. Something that surprised me after replaying it recently is the difficulty curve. Mighty Final Fight is tough, but it's fair. It doesn't set out to destroy you like some NES games did. It pushes you, but it never becomes cheap or overwhelming. Boss fights hit hard but follow readable patterns. Levels get busier but never impossible. It's the kind of challenge modern gamers might actually appreciate, demanding but not discouraging. And honestly, that's one of the things that makes the game hold up so well. In a time when difficulty is either heavily adjustable or extremely punishing, Mighty Final Fight finds a comfortable middle ground. It respects the player without overwhelming them. Now let's talk about how this game feels today, especially with modern gaming habits. In 2025, players have access to almost endless genres: massive open worlds, ultra-polished action games, sprawling RPGs, live service multiplayer titles, and everything in between. But there's something refreshing about going back to a game that's straightforward, focused, and confident in what it wants to be. Mighty Final Fight doesn't waste time. No long tutorials, no cinematics, no crafting systems, no endless menus. You select your character, you fight your way through exaggerated thugs, and you enjoy the ride. That focused design is something modern gamers often forget to appreciate until they stumble across it again. And with retro-style games becoming more popular every year, titles that intentionally recreate the 8-bit or 16-bit look and feel, it's clear that players still love games like this. Mighty Final Fight doesn't need to be modernized to be fun. It already delivers the core experience that many modern indie titles try to capture. So, after revisiting it, what's my verdict? Is Mighty Final Fight still good today? Absolutely, and I'd even argue it has aged better than many more serious beat-em-ups from the same era. Its colorful, comedic style gives it a timeless appeal. Its leveling system adds depth without complicating the experience. Its combat is still crisp, its pacing still works, and its charm, that hasn't faded at all. If you're a retro fan, it's an easy recommendation. If you enjoy modern beat-em-ups, it's a fascinating piece of gaming history that still feels surprisingly modern. And if you've never played it at all, but you're curious about where the genre came from, Mighty Final Fight is one of the best NES entries you can possibly start with. It's not lengthy, it's not designed for co-op, it doesn't have cinematic storytelling, but what it does have is clarity, energy, personality, and heart. And sometimes, that's more than enough. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this deep dive into one of the NES's most charming beat-em-ups, make sure to like, subscribe, and let me know what retro game you want me to explore next. There are plenty more classics and plenty more memories worth revisiting.